Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayana. Hari Om and greetings from Clearfield. Almost every study of car accidents concludes that more than 80% of accidents happen within a mile or two from one's home. Why? Why do we get into accidents in such familiar territory? The simple reasoning for that is we take for granted the roads, the drivers. And this can be extrapolated. If you think of the people you take for granted the most, perhaps the people you have the harshest tone with, it would be your family members. Yes? Extrapolating this even more. Every one of us is in the pursuit of happiness, and every one of us is looking for happiness with our eyes. Completely taking for granted, what if we're already happiness? In which case our eyes don't serve the purpose of this pursuit. Rather, we have to close our eyes and rediscover that happiness. This is the vision of our course, our Applied Gita course. The majority of us, not all of us, but the majority of us take Bhagavad Gita for granted. I know there's 700 shlokas. I know there's some famous shlokas in chapter 2. You know you're not taking this for granted when you become more cheerful, more content, where your life becomes a song. And this is why our course is not on Bhagavad Gita, it's on applying Bhagavad Gita. In the month of September, we focused on applying Gita when it comes to evolving. What is our first step from feeling stress and anxiety and sadness? How do we come out of that? And last week we studied Shloka 10 from Adhyaya 13, where Bhagavan Krishna tells Prince Arjuna, Bhagavan Krishna is telling us that you should find and enjoy alone time. Many would get bored if they were by themselves. A whole lot of people in this course just completed investing 100 hours in silence, completely by themselves. And the feedback at the end of our silence retreat, everybody wanted more. People really were moved by that experience. What should you do in this alone time? I'll give you 3 steps on what you should do. Number 1, read, write, and reflect. Vitamin R3. Read for 10 minutes, read Bhagavad Gita. Write for 10 minutes, journal on what you learned. reflect for 10 minutes. How are you going to apply this? This should evolve to becoming a more common sense person. What does common sense feel like? The stress in our lives we create, yet we expect someone else to resolve that stress. But someone who's following common sense will know, since I created the stress, I have to uncreate the stress. So in your alone time, start to make sense of that stress, that anxiety, that sadness. And number 3 is ideation. I think that's how you pronounce it. The majority of us, we get lost in implementation. Yes, true statement. I wish I could describe to you the demands of my day. Like right now, I'm running on the last 5% of my battery, physically and mentally also. Because there's so much implementation with traveling, with teaching, with 2 infants. Ideation is what makes that implementation worthwhile. And another word for ideation is intention. What is your intention with why you're in school, why you're pursuing a relationship, and so on and so forth? In your alone time, let go of feeling busy. This is how we evolve. And the final shloka we studied on evolving was chapter 4, shloka 36. In chapter 4, shloka 36, we're told that even if we're the worst person in humanity, we still should have hope because our Creator's looking out for us. And so, when you insult someone, when you react, when you make a mistake, don't take it personally. This happened. You are not a failure. You are not hopeless. When we devolve an event to be our own fabric, that's where this shloka doesn't apply then. We're defeating the message of God. Not to take what we've done personally, and subsequently, to ensure that we're around those who are trying to evolve also. In Srimad Bhagavatam, many of you are in our Vedanta and Bhagavata course. One episode will be where I'll make this very simple, there's a crocodile that has caught hold of an elephant. And this elephant is being drowned. And this elephant asks for help from Bhagwan Hari. And Bhagwan Hari does come and help, and he sends his Sudarshana Chakra. And that Sudarshana Chakra hits that crocodile, destroys the crocodile, and that elephant is freed. Now, it seems quite obvious. You release the person who's a victim, and you stop the person who's causing that harm. But think about this some more. Anyone whom that Sudarshan Chakra touches is freed. So even before that elephant was freed, who was freed? That crocodile. And what that shows us, if I'm a sinner, if I'm someone who's ignorant and has a lot of vices, if I hold on to someone who's noble, virtuous, I will be freed too. And in very simple terms, if you attach to one who is detached, you will be detached also. If you attach to one who is detached. This completes our study for this course on evolving. And after evolving, we're now shifting to deciding. And we're going all the way to chapter 18, shloka 37. This is one of the final shlokas of the entire text. Chapter 18, shloka 37. On Wednesdays, I teach a children and kids class called Happy Hour. And routinely I ask them to show me their notebooks. I'm asking all of you now, show me your notebooks. Show me where you're taking notes. Okay, show me your pencils. Okay, show me your Bhagavad Gita copies. You knew I was going to ask that, correct? Okay. Please repeat after me. Yattad agre vishamiva. Yattad agre vishamiva. Pariname mritopamam. Pariname mritopamam. Tatsukham satvikam proktam. Tatsukham satvikam proktam. Atma buddhi prasadajam. Atma buddhi prasadajam. First quarter. That which in the beginning feels like visha. Visha means poison. And this is a very overt example. I don't think anyone knows what poison feels like. But you can infer. Maybe like a bee sting. That's poison in your system. Drugs are actually a poison in your system too. For those who experiment with drugs, you're really just poisoning yourself. Alcohol is a poison also. You're just poisoning yourself. So, anyways, let's not get into that lifestyle discussion right now. What in the beginning feels like poison. In other words, it's difficult. Okay, and this makes more sense when the second quarter is connected, but I'm not going to connect it yet, before we even get there. In the first month of our study in the Vedanta course, we had studied Tattva Bodha, an elemental text on Vedanta. And I distinctly remember Swami Tejamananda making a statement which is so commonsensical, I don't even know why he needed to say it. I should have known this already. What he shared was, all that is worthwhile in life is free. All that is worthwhile in life is free. To be able to sleep well, do you need to have a lot of money for that? To be able to be healthy, do you need a lot of money for that? To be able to love and be loved. According to the Beatles, you can't buy my love, correct? All that is worthwhile is really worthless. Worthless means you can't put a price to that. Here, Bhagavan is essentially sharing, all that is worthwhile is difficult in the beginning, like exercising. You ask the Devis from Washington, D.C., who ran the half marathon in Cleveland this past weekend. One of the Devis, we have a running from the mind community, and she was sharing that she felt like she was dead. As she was training for the half marathon, she was like, this is what death must what death must feel like. And I'm laughing in an encouraging way. I'm laughing with her, not at her. It is difficult. You ask the people who came to the silence retreat from Saturday to Sunday to Wednesday how difficult it was in the beginning. So now the second line comes in. Pariname, but at the end, amrita upamam. At the end, it's like amrita. Amrita, in the book I'm reading, amrita is ambrosia. What's ambrosia? Then I have to define another word. It is... How many of you like to eat cherries? Okay. Cherries are my favorite fruit. And when I was younger and I had more time, I used to squeeze the juice out of cherries and drink it. Why eat all the pulp when you can just drink the juice? That's what amrita is. Where there's nothing that is not fundamental or pure. In other words, in the end, you feel free. So in the beginning, it is difficult. In the end, you feel free. You have lots of examples of that. Having a good relationship is difficult in the beginning, but if you establish boundaries and manage expectations, you feel quite free at the end, correct? Paying for a solid basement in your home is difficult in the beginning. It's an unnecessary expense. You hardly use your basement, but if done well, then your house will be stable. Okay, let's focus on more practicality to this. How many of you attended the Happiness Series 2? By a show of hands, you attended at least one of those sessions. Okay. For your reference, the Happiness Series 3 is going to be December 2nd to the 5th. And the focal point this year will be 4 workshops on working with people, particularly the workplace. Whether you're at school or you're serving with people, obviously in corporate jobs. Anyways, in the Happiness Series, I had shared thoughts on resilience. Many people think that some people are just born more resilient. And I would agree when it comes to your physical immunity system. Sheila and I see the difference between us two, that our resilience, our immunity system is different. In the Happiness Series 2, I had shared with all of you 3 ways how you can develop resilience. Think. What are 3 ways you can become more resilient? Share with the person next to you. Number 1, exercise. The more physically healthy you are, there's a greater chance you will be mentally healthy. Number 2, examples. When you have examples in your life of people who are resilient, you feel this is possible also. And number 3, this is more subtle, ethics. When people have defined ethics, like, I need to take care of my aging parents, as an example, that's my responsibility, then even if I'm tired, even if I'm sick, I still get out of bed and I do it. Ethics. Now I want you to take the same model and I want you to overlap this on how do I endure the difficulty in the beginning of a activity, in the beginning of a relationship, keeping in mind at the end it will be easy or freeing. 3 ways. Number 1, be clear about the ends. If you are clear about the ends, you will manage the difficulty in the beginning. Number 2, role models. If you have a role model who's gone through the same journey or is going through the same journey and they're doing all right, then you know you can do it too. And number 3, and this is the most important point in regards to the second quarter, is patience. Without converting the value of patience to the virtue of patience, in other words, without practicing patience, unfortunately I have to tell you, you will never be independently joyous. You will never be able to invoke the discipline of the Guru Shishya Parampara. Patience is such a fundamental building block of one's personality on this journey. And our society, our schooling doesn't encourage that. We expect everything fast. I called people out in the meditation and life class recently how too many people feel they're exceptions when I tell people, don't take notes electronically, don't eat in class, don't lie down, all of these disciplines, but people feel that they're beyond these disciplines. And really what that's indicative of is that they don't have the patience to develop the humility to live by the message of Bhagavan, the message of God. So this is for you to think about. If you think you're an exception, that's really just a sign of lack of patience. Patience will help us be free at the end. I go to the third quarter. Tat, what is just described, is known as sukham. Sukham means happiness. What kind of sukham? Sattvic sukham. Proktam. This is what is said. This is what people share. So putting this all together. Tamas is laziness. This is why we worship Mother Parvati for the first 3 nights of Navaratri, to stop being lazy. Tamasic sukha is known as pain. When you're engaged in self-destructive behaviors, remember we discussed that, and you think you're happy because of it, it's just tamasic sukha. More evolved than this is rajasic sukha. And this is known as pleasure. When I'm engaging in pleasure, overeating, excessive comforts, always wanting to vacation, I feel that that's happiness. It's pleasure. But what's being described in this shloka is peace. This is sattvic sukham. And I'm going to open up these words even more. Kham, K-H-A-M, means space. And the prefix su means good space. Where are you supposed to have good space? You're not supposed to have good space in your kitchen or your car. You are supposed to have good space there, but the first place you have to have good space is in here. Exactly. If you have good space in here, everywhere is a good space, including this business center, in this random hotel, in this random state, in this random country. But if there's bad space in here, you can be in the most conducive good space, but it's still bad space. Then the word sattva. Built into the word sattva is the word sat. Tva means like. This is like sat. Sattva is a great symbol of what your nature is like. So peace is indicative of who you are. And finally, I'm going to pick up on the word proktam. Is said, is declared. Who said this? Who declared this? Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Upanishads. The rishis. A rishi is someone who can see what we can't see. The rishis have shared this. In other words, they've seen the end, and they're making these observations. You know, if you're carpooling with a group of people, and the first car goes ahead and they hit traffic unexpectedly, and then they call the second and fourth car and say, hey, don't take this route, take another route. Because they're ahead. They've seen what the other cars have not seen, correct? Whenever you see this word proktam, said, uvacha, etc., remember it's the rishis who have shared this. And finally, where is this sukham coming from? Atma buddhi. Atma means that which is closest. And buddhi means intellect or ideal or vision. A vision that's close to you. Prasadajam, it's born there. This feeling, this cheer is born there. In other words, this comes from within oneself. Where does pain come from? It actually doesn't come from outside, but you feel it inside. Where does pleasure come from? We feel it comes from the outside. But where does peace come from? Anyone who's peaceful definitively knows they're not attributing it to outside. It has nothing to do with context. It has to do with content. This month, we're focusing on deciding. I shared recently in our Vedanta and Media workshop We have 12 years to drastically change our lifestyle, or we will not have an environment that's even remotely all right to live in, to live with. I shared in the workshop that last year, natural disasters cost the world $300 billion. And those natural disasters are because of what? Because I like to buy a whole lot of new clothing and it takes a lot of water. Because I like to eat meat and that takes a whole lot of land. And on and on and on. That's my lifestyle. It is short-term thinking. How are we making decisions? In the short term. Short term means self-centered. But this shloka is saying, right as we think more about deciding to break open that, to shift our decision making from Preya to Shreya. From minimum happiness for minimum people for minimum time to maximum happiness for maximum people for maximum time in maximum ways. This is the first thought on applying Gita and decision making to be a long-term thinker. And a great exercise in doing this is to analyze if you're an environmentalist. And if you are, this shloka is already covered. If you're not, take steps to become more environmentally conscious. Then this shloka will come to life. The next shloka we will explore, not this week, but next week. There's a word that's often misinterpreted in our scriptures called daksha. People think daksha means being dexterous, but it's much deeper than that. And I'll explain more next week. I really like this virtue, so I wanted to introduce it to you so you can think about it. Let's chant this shloka together. Yattad agre vishamiva pariname mritopamam tatsukham satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. Oh.